So to give us more details then, I'm joined by the Minister of Social Development, Lindiwe Zulu. Minister, good morning. Thank you for joining me. So the President has spoken. It now falls upon you to make it happen. What does the resuscitation and reintroduction of the Social Relief of Distress Grant look like from where you sit?
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Tula Sizwe. Yes, may I just indicate that we're very excited about the President making that announcement. And I'm also happy to hear you saying that this is one of the big stories. And what I would like to say as a Minister of Social Development is that the issues of poverty, unemployment, and inequality must remain a top story for South Africa. And it must always remain a big story. And the reason why I'm saying it must remain a big story is because we cannot afford as a nation to continuously have the numbers of people who are hungry, the number of people who are unemployed, the number of people who are in distress in general. Therefore, while this is a great relief for those that have been receiving the 350 before, we've got proof of the impact of that 350 through the research that was done both by the department and other organizations. So for us as the Department of Social Development, it's again a positive response to the needs of our people and the felt needs of our people, because COVID-19 still continues to make it difficult even for those who used to go out and hustle for themselves.
So where do you start in introducing this grant, Minister, with the agency that you work with, the South African Social Security Agency? Is it a matter of going back to the database that you had already from the previous iteration of the grant, where we understand some 7 million unemployed people benefited from it, or is it a matter of starting afresh with registration?
Well, look, it's good that we already have that data of those that were paid already in the past, but also people must remember that even those who were paid, we had to keep checking on them each and every month to make sure that we're paying the right people who are not back at work. And you will recall that we kept on saying the data that we have, connecting it to other grant recipients as well as any other government support, is very important for us. So for those people who will have to, everybody will have to qualify, by the way. They'll have to do the application yet again. And I know that many at times will say, yeah, but the application takes long and all that. Here's the bottom line. We need to be responsive. We need to be accountable with the money that has to go out. And remember that also the President has expanded the number of people who are eligible for this grant by allowing unemployed caregivers who currently receive child support. And this is a lesson from the previous time, that when we were looking at the data and statistics, we realized that in the main, it was men who were accessing the money. Not that there's anything wrong with them accessing the money, but it becomes a bit difficult for caregivers and mothers who actually need the money more, and they rely only on the child support grant. So everybody will have to go back and apply again. And we now know exactly, they now know, majority of them know what exactly needs to be done and how to do the application. We covered, imagine that the applications went as far as 11 million at some point, which meant to us that so many people are unemployed, but we needed to clean that out and make sure that the people that are approved are people who deserve that. So we're going to start from scratch from a point of view of application, but we've got our systems in place.
In a moment, Minister, I will ask you about the measures that you'll be taking to ensure that people who are not supposed to benefit don't benefit. But I want us to focus a bit more, for a moment at least, on the expansion of the Social Relief of Distress Grant, the 350 Rand grant. There are a number of social grants that were introduced over a number of years, but also last year we saw measures to sort of tweak some of the grants that were already in place, with the result that, sitting where I am, I don't know, for example, how the inclusion of caregivers who are unemployed in the cohort of people who now can qualify for this 350 Rand grant? How does that sit alongside the 500 Rand caregiver grant that you introduced last year? Does it cancel it and replace it with this, or did that run its course originally?
Remember that the caregivers grant is a normal grant like all other grants. So that wasn't removed at all, first and foremost. Recall that also the child support grant was increased, as well as all other grants were increased from the very beginning, but that ended in October. And therefore, the normal grant which child care givers get will then include this amount when they apply and they qualify for that. So it doesn't change the original social grant that is a standing and standard which has been happening since 1994, since the Department of Social Development, with now Social Development, which used to be the Department of Social Welfare then.
And let's talk finances then, Minister. Your budget, 205 billion Rand, you tabled it earlier on budget vote, tabled it in Parliament, vote 19. And you were saying already then that there are measures to sort of reduce in terms of what is available. You got less than you had expected from the medium-term expenditure framework from October last year. How will you fund all of this?
Well, look, this announcement that the president has made, remember that it is outside of the original budget that we presented. And Treasury has had to look for the money. And it must also be appreciated, Tula Sizwe, that even before the announcement which was made by the president, we did make a presentation for a request of the extension of this 350, basing ourselves on the research that we got, basing ourselves on the impact that it had for our people. And so we had already made that request. But of course, as I indicated in previous interviews, we are also very conscious on the need and the demand on the purse with regard to everyone else looking for finances from Treasury. So it's not like when the social grant was going to come to an end, we didn't make that request. We made it, but being conscious, obviously, of that, we might get it, we might not get it. But I think the analysis of the impact of COVID-19 so far and the analysis of joblessness and job losses at this point in time moved the president to appreciate the need for the people to get this money. But also, I wouldn't want us to look at this 350 in isolation of all the other packages that the president announced yesterday. Because part of what we would like to see as a Department of Social Development is to get more and more people to be self-sufficient, independent, and making sure that they are able to take care of themselves. So when we look at social development, for instance, when we look at social development and we look at small business development and we look at how small business development also is trying to do its best to improve in supporting your small and medium enterprises, including the informal businesses. We're happy with that because we don't want to be looked in isolation as a Department of Social Development and only just a consumer. We are looking at ourselves also contributing to the economic development and advancement as the president announced yesterday.
Speaking of that, Minister, just clarify for us then, we keep talking about 350 Rand and our conception of it in many people's heads is cash in hand. My understanding is that in some instances and in some provinces, it actually takes the form of vouchers to buy groceries and other forms that amount to that 350 Rand. Am I correct in that understanding?
This 350 is cash in hand. The other one you're talking about with regard to vouchers and all, remember that we're also responsible for social relief of distress in other areas, like when there's floods or when there's fires, or when also there's people that really cannot take care of themselves. So the voucher system is something different. Here, people are given that cash in hand because they need to be able to use that cash. Many of them actually pool their cash together as families. Some of them, by the way, which I'm very happy with, some of them even started small businesses because they decided that the money must make money for themselves so that in future they're not entirely dependent on the state. So the two are very separate. This one, they get the money in hand.
Thank you for clarifying that. And I believe an example of the one that I was alluding to would have been in the last few days in the wake of the rioting and the looting that happened, that you then introduced those vouchers for people to get some kind of reprieve. Minister, you are talking about everyone needing to apply once again for this SRD, a Social Relief of Distress Grant. Last time shortly after the welcoming the introduction of this measure to help the poor, not long after that, we were lamenting how even people who were not supposed to get this grant were getting it. We started hearing of people who are inmates getting it. We started hearing of people who are actually on the PERSAL system, who are employed by government, getting it. What are you doing differently this time around to ensure that we don't get to a point where we are cleaning up after people have received at least 2 or 3 payments, to ensure that it doesn't happen to start with?
Once bitten, twice shy. So we cannot find ourselves in the same situation as we did in the past. And remember that that was the first time that we were implementing and putting systems in place within a very short space of time. One of the reasons why we're not going to be announcing like today when this is going to start is simply because we want to make sure that our systems, they were improved, by the way. Our systems have really greatly been improved. We want to make sure that we don't find ourselves in the same situation as before. And therefore, it's for that reason that right now, behind the scenes, as we did in the past, we're looking at how can we tighten the access and how can we even tighten ensuring that when people are applying, the sifting of who belongs where. That's why for us, the issue of data was very important as to how fast can we be able to verify the applications and the data that we have. And I think that our technology and our system has really improved greatly from that time to now. We're going to do our best to make sure that we catch the Tsotsi's on time, but we also are aware of the fact that they will not stop. They will continue. What is important is our systems, are our systems tight enough to kick them out long before they even get anywhere near approval?
Lastly, Minister, in your budget vote, one of the commitments you made was to finalize the policy on the basic income grant for tabling to cabinet. This suggests that a lot of the activism by some civil society organizations actually is pointed in the same direction that you are going as a government, because you were not talking at that stage about exploring the idea of a basic income grant. You were talking about finalizing a policy to present to cabinet, which is a firmer stance. In the wake of this, are we seeing the backbone of what a future basic income grant for people who are poor between the ages of 18 and 59 can benefit from? Is this SRD grant, given that it was meant to be temporary, but it ended up being extended and expanded over a period of time, and now until March next year, is this the framework and the backbone of a future basic income grant?
It is a stepping stone, and I think that you will recall that the president did mention it, the issue of the basic income grant and the fact that government is taking a serious look into it. And it is a stepping stone for us because recall that we brought back the basic income grant discussion and debate on the table on the basis that we were saying, yes, 350, then what afterwards? It was the department officials who then said to me, Minister, there's something that had been long developed before. We're bringing it back on the table already. So I wish to thank all the civil society organizations that stepped up into it. Immediately we started the conversation, as well as the different political parties, because, by the way, We've had a conversation already in Parliament around this, and most of the political parties were in support of it. And basically why people are in support of it is because we're looking for different ways and means of empowering our people, of dealing with issues of poverty, hunger, and unemployment. And this is but one element that we need to make sure that we succeed and proceed in it. And the policy process is underway.
Minister Lindiwe Zulu, I've got to thank you for your time. Thank you for clarifying those matters around the social relief of distress grant, but also the bigger conversation around a basic income grant, which has been the cry of many civil society organizations over the years. In fact, we will be getting some reaction throughout this program to the announcement by the President of the extension of the SRD grant until March 2022.